I just cleaned a porta potty today.
Yeah.
Come on,
Well,
Dr. Bricado.
What do you think something like that pays?
Okay.
Right. The royal flush.
The royal flush. You're jamming my investigation here. You're jamming my toilet.
Everybody knows porta potties don't flush.
Right.
Welcome to the Witness Box, everybody. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz, alongside my co-host, Chris McDonough of The Interview Room, and Dr. Gary Bricado, a forensic psychologist and author of the best-selling book, The New Evil, which you can get on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or any major bookstore near you. This is a part 2 of our discussion about the Sebastian Rogers case. We also dive in to the Kohberger case, Summer Wells, Audrey Cunningham, and a few others. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the show.
Whenever you hear a law enforcement agency or a PIO stand at the podium and say, everybody's cooperating, right?
Yeah.
And then they use, but that word.
We have not cleared anyone, but we have absolutely no evidence to support foul play.
That means behind the scenes, okay, the pile is getting pretty higher, PhD piled higher and deeper. Okay. And this is where they need to make a decision to move this investigation forward. And that decision should be, look, the parents have been cooperative, and if they think in any way, shape, or form that the parents may be holding back, then they need to say, however, and then fill in that blank. Okay. The parents are either A, persons of interest, or B, we've taken them out of the circle. Okay. Remember how long it took Ronnie Lawson to say, well, they're not off the table and they're not cooperating. Yeah. How long did that take?
Everyone in Summers' case is still a suspect. No, they're not cooperating right now.
He should have done it in like 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, he could have done it sooner.
And
yeah.
Right. Because then he follow up and said, well, everybody's a suspect.
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay. Why didn't you tell the public that from the get-go?
But the thing was that the public, when I say a lot of the public or the defenders, kind of use that they don't quite understand what everybody's a suspect means. And
what did you just read the last motion in the Kohberger case?
I have not.
Okay. Well, she gives like 4 pages. It's like 100 and some odd pages of motion about the public perception that was projected by the agency. Okay. And even to the point where she goes, there's a lot of examples out here. Scott Green wrote a book, i.e. the president of the university. She uses that in the motion for Kohberger. Okay. Do you know why? Because the university was so worried about, the community and the feelings, and they're worried about offending, anything or anybody. And you heard it in that press conference you just played with that PIO. We know the community. Okay. Well, guess what? It's not about the community. Here's a call coming in. Okay. We appreciate your assistance. We appreciate your help. Okay. We're looking for Sebastian Rogers. If you have information, please reach out and contact the police department. We would appreciate that. It's not about, and by the way, we're worried about how you feel, okay? But instead you hear, at this point, we don't know. And we understand, though, that you as the community are worried and yada, 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 yada. Okay. Whatever happened to reality in communities with police work? Okay. When I've stood in front of the microphone, which has been many times, by the way, in high-profile murders, many of them, I've told the community, we are looking for A, B, C, or D. This is what we have, E, F, and G. Here is the number. Call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know where you saw that work very successfully? You saw it work in Houston.
Audrey Cunningham.
Correct.
They did a fantastic job. Of keeping the public, informed of what they could. And, even that sheriff, by the way, he was awesome during that whole thing. When he would hold these press conferences, he would say, when he would be asked questions, he would say, look, I'm not going to compromise the investigation by that, because we feel like, there is some information that we're not going to give out, but this is what I can tell you. And it seemed to make a whole big difference. Right away, they had a person of interest. Right away.
Well, he told them this was the last guy that was with him.
Yes.
Okay. He's a person of interest. If you have any information, please call us. And guess what? The store clerk that saw them across the street at the donut shop, the suspect out front at the donut shop, called the cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They pulled that video.
Right.
This was just after he had thrown a brick or a cinder block around the child and threw her into the river. He came for donuts. Now think about the power of that in front of a jury. And now think about, well, we don't really want to tell the public that we're looking for this guy or that he's a person of interest. Do you see how that can play pretty quickly? Yes. Can you see in the LA case and the Rachel Marin case where, you have this, Nike hat? Okay, why not tell the public? They're going to solve the crime. Let's tell the public. What if they know something about this situation that if they told the public would absolutely change the dynamics in a split second about Summer and about Sebastian?
Persons of interest and who you can take off the table. Right.
Gary and I are both members of the Cold Case Foundation. Gary knows how I operate. I am the director of criminal investigations at the Cold Case Foundation. I can't tell you how many agencies we've met with, and we've gone through all the evidence, we've gone through all the stuff, and we've looked at them and said, why didn't you tell the public? Well, we don't want to compromise the investigation. Well, let's see. Let's get this right. You're contacting us because we're 25 years later, and you don't want to compromise the investigation?
Yeah, it's compromised,
Well, what have they got? Where have they been? Where are they
like going? That says, I don't want to wear this pair of shoes because I don't want to scuff them up. And they keep them in the closet until they outgrow them, and they got to throw the shoes out. They have no use.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like in an effort to keep it pristine, you squander.
You
That's
analyze, you paralyze. And
you guys see that a lot? You do see that a lot?
Well, that's why the Cold Case Foundation exists.
Right.
Right. That's why there's job security there. That's for sure. Okay. Because you have agencies, and it's not any fault of their own, i.e. the people we work with, because they're picking up somebody else's, cold case, somebody else that didn't do what, should have been done. And, they bounce it off of us. And, depends on, the nature of the situation. We have 137 experts that look at this and go, well, what about A, B, C, and D? Well, we thought about that. Well, then do it. If you thought about it, then execute. Don't tuck it away. And same in this situation, when you come to the podium and you say what they said, well, then they need to have some chutzpah and say, you know what, this person could be a person of interest. You're not saying they did it. You're just saying, look, there's evidence that we're collecting. Remember, you don't investigate people, you investigate information. There's evidence here that we are following, and it involves A, B, C, and D. If anybody has information about that, that'll do one of two things. If the individual that you're putting that out in the public comes to you and says, hey, why are you doing that? You say, well, because we have some problems in the investigation. Would you like to clarify? Yeah, with my lawyer. Not a problem. Bring your lawyer.
Right.
Bring him into the interview room. We'd love to have him. Bring the whole family. We don't care. That's how you solve crimes. These types of crimes that are at a stalemate. There's not a person I don't think, in Tennessee that does not believe that Summer Wells's case is at a stalemate. They say, yeah, we're working it. Really? Okay, fine. What do you got?
But Chris, what I think has become sort of a bastardization of this process is where you get the other extreme, and the public wants very badly to be involved with a high-profile case, and they're not getting information, so they basically make it up, or Correct. They steal it, or they get it from inappropriate means because they want to be armchair kind of sleuths that are involved in the case. And I think that's why, especially in today's day and age, you're seeing a little bit more of this holding things close to the vest, because when things get out, they rip through the true crime community. There are even, instances in which there's speculation that offenders, people that are on trial, have used the true crime community as megaphones to put an idea out there, or to taint a storyline, or you know what I'm saying. I mean, these things happen. Wouldn't you agree? Both of you?
Yeah, I
sure.
Do. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Sure.
And I just think that's why I feel some law enforcement agencies are a little paralyzed in what they want to do, because it can go that way too, Chris.
But 90% of the time you can control the flow of holdback information.
That's the key.
Yeah. Where they get in trouble is they care about what people think.
Yeah, I understand.
Meaning, right? I mean, you get these crazy people that go out and say A, B, C, and D. I mean, just think about what even I got accused by walking up the street and looking in the Koberger case, and I see the glove. Okay. I think I had 10 or 15 YouTube channels do a whole thing about me finding the glove. Okay. And saying, all these other things about that glove, that guy planted that glove. Oh, really? Okay, fine. But you see, you expect that lunacy,
right,
as a professional homicide investigator. You just know that those lunatics are going to exist.
Right.
And so you look past that and say, well, no, actually, the cops collected the glove. It was left out there. You're right. It was a mistake. Okay. And you move on and you keep moving. Where they get in trouble, and this is why we have job security from the Cold Case Foundation, okay, is investigators get their ego in the way, and it becomes their baby no matter what. When the only way you solve crime is you got to talk to people. And guess what? There's no better venue than social media in today. And look at those who are successful that do it successfully. You know who does it successfully? Politicians, they use social media to their advantage, even if it's a negative argument. Look at Elon Musk. He's selling more Teslas by 2 words on Twitter than have ever been sold. And he doesn't care if he gets trolled by 5 million people because he's Teflon Elon. You know, he doesn't care. And investigators, if they have the truth, i.e., it's sitting next to them in a case file, okay, they need to have that Teflon. And you don't put information out, which they didn't in Marin's case, that the guy was under their noses for 5 months. Okay. But just think, when they got him in custody and he said, you know, I've been working at this restaurant for 5 months. What they're thinking now, holy crap, maybe we should have put the Nike hat out. Okay. And it expedites things potentially. And that's because, you know, they wanted to hold everything against the chest. Well, we don't know how Rachel was murdered because they're smart and they held that back. And that's what you hold back. And we used to hold back information like, you know, where the wounds were located on the victim, how many wounds, that kind of stuff. Now it's like, you know, well, the guy was wearing a red shirt. Well, don't tell the public he was wearing a red shirt, whatever you do. Why not? And guess what? The criminals are sitting back going, yeah, good for me. I don't know why he walked out that door. I'm just not sure. Really? Okay. You know, knock on everybody's door around the neighborhood, which they have, and say, did you see Sebastian come out the door? No. Did you? Have you? Ring everybody's doorbell.
Yeah,
check everybody's doorbell camera,
yeah,
which they have
cameras everywhere.
Yeah, we're in a technologically surveillance society.
Right.
Almost. I mean, there are traffic cameras that are all tied. You know, some of them are all tied together.
Right. Gary, let me ask you this. You said, you know, when a piece of information gets dropped in the true crime community, you know, tears through it. I don't disagree with that at all, but I do think that leaving it the way that they leave it is just as bad sometimes. And what I mean by that is if they can clear somebody, what are people going to do? How do you rip through that? They say, okay, look, we're not looking at the father. He was at work. We're looking in a different direction. But once again, just because somebody's off the table doesn't mean that they can't end up back on the table. It's happened before, but that's just not the direction that we're going. I don't really know how they would tear something like that up. I mean,
well, what I mean is more that you're in the middle of doing a complicated investigation, and you know that after you find a suspect, and sort of that then there's going to be a legal process, and from beginning to end, the whole thing is being mucked with gigantic mass of people.
Right.
Each think they know better than law enforcement, better than the professionals, better than the judge, better than and what you wind up with is this very peculiar soup of information that may or may not be accurate, may or may not be pertinent, and everybody wants to kind of have their piece of the pie in terms of the attention and the whole thing. And I have to say that I think that makes the whole process exponentially more difficult on the one hand. But like all technologies, there's good and evil to it. Because on the other hand, I agree, it can be this amazing tool for mass communication. For example, I remember loving the show America's Most Wanted and how it helped capture some of the most awful people by using the television medium. Remember that, Chris? That show? It was fantastic. And Robert Stack was the host, I think, right? Or was it? John Walsh. John Walsh was the host, whose son was murdered.
Right, Adam.
and it was terrific. I mean, I think they even helped capture John List, the family annihilator, right? I mean, some really, really awful people. And I think all technologies have good and evil to them. But I think one of these days, somebody has got to have an episode on a podcast or a chat or something about this balance of true crime ethics, and about how, where does a tool that is useful for mass propagation of information that could lead to capture of someone end, and a bunch of people who have no right to that information running around being invasive, inappropriate. I mean, Chris, Josh, you've seen podcasts, for example, where true crime sleuths will do things like show up at the home of a person, demand to talk to them,
right?
Show up in the, it's an interesting thing. I mean, on the one hand, that could be,
it's insane.
It could be a great way to get information, and it could also be insinuating oneself. So I just think that's a really interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
And,
and that's controllable, though.
Yeah.
That happened in Georgia. Remember a long time ago?
Oh, yeah.
That happened in Boston recently, and people got arrested. You see that's the advantage of the PD.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the advantage to walk out and say, no, you're wrong. You're under arrest. Okay. Thank you very much. You're now part of the system.
Somebody has insinuated him or herself.
Well, whatever. Right. I mean, but think of it this way. Okay. The other side of that cannon, okay, is if you say nothing, you actually create more of those folks. And law enforcement.
That's the balance. That's the balance.
It's not a balance. The balance becomes unbalanced because the unbalanced make it unbalanced. And and it by holding information back. I mean, think of it this way. Let's hypothesize here. They actually know where the stepdad is. They know where he was. And let's pretend, and this is just pretend, it wasn't at work. Okay? And now he gets on the news, hypothetically, and says, blah, blah, blah. All right? Now, you as an investigator can sit back and download, that podcast, whatever it is, or that newscast, and say, hey, the guy wasn't at work. Okay, well, we know that's not true. This is hypothesis, of course. It's all speculation at this point in terms of conversation only. Okay. But that's not true. As an investigator, it's not true. Why not come out to the public and say, we watched an interview recently, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to verify that information. Versus, the family has been cooperative. Do you see what would be the difference there? Because right now, if you say, "Oh, the family's cooperative," well, then guess what? You are creating an army of supporters on social media. An army. Look at Koberger. He's getting love letters. Okay. There are whole shows about, 50 other people that have murdered those 4 victims. Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. There are podcasts left and right, okay, that are, circling the wagons.
I don't even get love letters.
But right? But they put into the affidavit, no, wait a minute, there's DNA on the snap of the knife sheath. Okay, so, as you said, Gary, as Dr. Bricado said in the past, well, then he had to somehow throw his DNA into that building on that snap, on that sheath.
Right.
And it just...
From when he's out in the park.
It just happened to land, in the victim's room on the 3rd floor, in the back room. But of course, the cops planted it there. I mean, that was the whole plan anyway, right? I mean, through the whole thing. But right? So,
I mean, and you mean in these ridiculous hypotheses
of
that
course
are
I do. Yes.
yeah, ridiculous. I mean, just to be clear for the public that you
Right. But the common sense public and those that get it will go, yeah, of course, that's stupid.
right.
Okay. Those that can't figure out how to get out of jury duty, okay, will go, oh, that's a possibility. Okay. Well, you know what? That's why Anne, in her, 160 or 300 page last motion, has said, well, we want a logistic, change of venue. Well, why? And she gives all these things, like here's one that she said. This has attracted YouTubers and others to try to access property or look for souvenirs. Really? Who? That show the public proof. That's BS. Okay. All she did was just strap on the unbalanced. Okay. And all she's done is add it to her motion here for Brian's benefit. Okay. The guy who has the DNA in there. And that's because they didn't control the flow of information. They held it back. Okay. And that flow of information is now coming to bite them in the butt. And you can go read the motion. Okay? It's like 300 and some odd pages that the defense has put together. And they threw the president of the university under the bus because of his book, Mr. Green. Okay. You'll love this part here. Let's see here. You'll love this. Hang on for a minute.
Did you read this, Gary? Have you read this?
The Scott Green book?
No, the
motion.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
wait, in which case? Kohlberger?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes. I thought for a minute you were talking about a different case. Yes.
Yeah, she's blaming the media coverage for her client not being able to get a fair trial, and therefore she needs, a change of venue. Well, there's an old saying in the news business: don't blame the folks who buy the ink by the barrel. Okay, remember that one, Gary? Okay, and then she goes on to talk to the right.
I heard that in a long time. I forgot that one.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. And so she blames the media, and then she starts to go on and talk about, the chief, Moscow, all the great things that they did at the university. And what she did is she shifted everything into Brian's favor. She even mentions, the victim's father. And in this case here, where it's stale like this, they need to kick it loose by sometimes creating a little drama. You'd be surprised, somebody that comes back and says, you know what? I was in the Navy with that guy. Really? Now, hello, yeah, tip line. Hey, let me tell you about that guy. Really? Yeah, I've watched him on, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And let me say this about that. Really? Okay, what do you got? Or, you get one of the neighbors that lived next to one of the 4 other marriages. I used to listen to them fight all the time. You'd be surprised how many neighbors I've had call, solve crimes. Really, what happened? Well, one day I saw him hit her in the head with a frying pan. Meanwhile, I've sat in an interview with these guys, and they're like, "No, I would never touch my wife. Are you serious? No, never, ever." Okay, not a problem. Have a great night. We'll talk again. Next thing you know, you're knocking on doors, kissing babies, shaking hands, and the neighbor says, "Oh, that guy's lying." Because your question is, have you ever seen so-and-so such and such involved in an argument or a discussion with his wife? Oh, yeah, they used to fight all the time in the front yard. Really? What happened? What did you see? That's because you went to the public and you said, help me, help me. But here, they start with we know you're not feeling good about this. We're not feeling good about it, and we're not giving up.
But Chris, in all fairness, I mean, what I was trying to say is, I think in the simplest terms, is something like, it works as long as the public continue to understand that they are the public and not the law enforcement, not the professionals without degrees.
I agree with
that. That's where the problem, right?
That,
and that's where I you know, the
but
true
Gary,
problem.
who cares what they think? Who cares
Well,
if you're walking a dog in a swamp? Who cares? Honestly, you know, it does not matter. The universe is on schedule.
It's not that part. It's not that part. It's the idea that
the case is still going to go forward.
Yeah.
Okay, whether somebody's got mud boots on or not. Okay, it does not matter. Okay? It doesn't matter. Great, let them weigh in. Okay, does it matter? And the answer is no, 0.
But you don't think that sometimes it can muck up? It can actually muddy the waters of an investigation or a case?
Name one case that's been mucked up.
I mean, it's an interest. I mean, in the interest of not getting cited for saying so, I won't name a few of them, perhaps offline. But there are cases I could think of where it's been a big problem.
Well, a problem, but where did it mess up the investigation? Those are two different things.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Were these people making allegations like in the Koberger thing? You know, the one professor, she said, "Well, that's the killer." Well, guess what? That person got sued, and that person got hammered.
So you're saying, and actually, to be honest, I think it's an extremely interesting thing to talk about, because you're really getting into, again, the ethics of this stuff, and and the utility of certain tools and how they can be abused and so forth. What it sounds like you're saying is that you feel that the tool of using the public has a kind of self-correction mechanism.
I think
lying, they get wiped out of the picture anyway.
I think we're headed into, and I said this recently at a class that I taught to law enforcement investigators. I said, ladies and gentlemen, you better embrace technology and the 21st century and social media. And you need to recognize how to use it to the advantage of the investigation. Okay? And now what I'm talking about is presenting information in a logical, right, truthful way that is solid from the investigation, from the investigators, okay? Where you tell the public, look, here's what we missed. Okay. And guess what? Even it took congressional, we're watching it unfold in front of us in congressional hearings. Look at all the retired guys out there that have never worked a homicide in their career. Not one, not a single one. Okay, not a single one. But by golly, they're experts. Okay, that they chase toasters for their careers. Okay, that was their job. They were in property crimes, or worse yet, they worked in the the whatever unit, cult unit. Okay, but never worked a single murder in their careers. And by golly, today, you would think, by golly, these are the real deal.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, they construct their abilities. It's like they went to the school of, I feel like I have a degree today, but which is horrifying, but that's the way it is. But let me understand, Chris, are you saying, just to bring this back to the Rogers case, you're saying that do you think that in some way, if there's a break in this case, it's going to be because someone in the mass in the public comes forward with something?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the old-fashioned gumshoe. That's getting out there and talking to people over and over again. And over again. I mean, let me put it to you in perspective. In the Rachel Marin case, that guy was there for 5 months. Right there in Hartford County. 5 months.
Pretty depressing.
How many people knew him and didn't say a word? The only way you can kick that loose is you've got to physically walk up to people and say, I know you know. When the timing's right, give me a call. But guess what? I'm coming back tomorrow. And then I'm going to come back in three more days. But when I do come back, I'm going to do my homework on you. I'm going to discover your shoe size. Okay. Is there anything I should know before I come home? Your home? No, sir, detective. Okay. Not a problem, sir. I appreciate your cooperation because we're just trying to solve the death of a 15-year-old or the abduction or the disappearance of a 15-year-old little boy. You want to help, don't you? Yes, sir. Okay, no problem.
Well, I have to say that the unexpected place that I think this really interesting conversation went is it started getting into this discussion of the pros and cons of these, again, these kind of ethics in true crime and what's okay to use and why you should have a deep conversation about how it could go wrong and how it could go right. And there are 5 or 6 areas in true crime that I think are worth discussing like that. I feel like that's a really interesting conversation to have. I mean, there is no code of ethics governing the true crime community. It's a Wild West. And I wish that somebody would lay out some guidelines.
Well,
this is below the belt. These are the lines you don't cross. You know, you don't say this about a person who, was earning degrees and investigating crimes when you weren't even in your placenta sack yet. That kind of thing. I mean, I think there are certain things that should be laid out by the community that I think intelligent and sensitive people would consider worth following. But there's no code of ethics.
Well, the problem is too, is it's just like laws. They're made for law-abiding citizens.
Well, yeah, but I mean, wouldn't you say, Chris, that was a very interesting conversation about? I really think you make some really good points.
Well,
about
and
the ability of using the public for solving crimes.
Right. No, I agree. And I think it's interesting that, to your point, there's no code of ethics anywhere. Okay. However,
right.
You can clean porta potties by the day and become an investigator in the evening. I mean,
you can make it up.
Well, but
that some of these people don't just make these credentials up.
But that's the point, right? Yeah. And then the people that that actually have done it or doing it or get it and they're involved in it, your competition, man. Your competition, you forget I'm a porta potty cleaner during the day. Just because you've investigated murders or you're a forensic psychologist that has written a book that's in the top 100 sellers in the world about understanding human behavior, what do you know? I just cleaned a porta potty today.
Yeah.
Come on, Dr. Bricado.
What do you think something like that pays?
It it pays ad revenue because then you can stir the pot. Then you can stir the pot, to Gary's point, and law enforcement agencies come out and they say, look, all you porta potty cleaners, you need to knock it off. Okay.
Right. The royal flush.
The royal flush. You're jamming my investigation here. You're jamming my toilet.
Everybody knows porta potties don't flush.
Right.
Thank you for listening to the Witness Box, everybody. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz, Dr. Gary Picado, Chris McDonough alongside me. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.